January 23, 1940. The bitter cold of a Buckinghamshire winter seeped through the walls of the stable yard at Bletchley Park. But inside the cramped, makeshift workspace, a different kind of chill ran through the small team of mathematicians huddled around their equipment. Dilly Knox, his hands trembling not from cold but from exhaustion and mounting excitement, watched as the letters began to emerge from the chaos. Clear, readable German text materializing from what had seemed an impenetrable wall of encrypted gibberish. After months of grueling effort, after countless false starts and crushing disappointments, they had done it. They had cracked their first wartime Enigma message, breaking open what the Germans believed to be an unbreakable code. The key they called the Green, a German army administrative cipher, had surrendered its secrets. In that frigid stable yard, with John Jeffries, Peter Twin, and Alan Turing working alongside Knox, the British took their first tentative step into a secret war that would reshape the entire conflict. None of them could have known that the work beginning in that moment would eventually account for breaking more than 63 million encrypted German messages, creating what Winston Churchill would later call the golden eggs laid by geese who never cackled. The problem facing Britain in early 1940 was nothing short of existential. German U-boats prowled the Atlantic shipping lanes with terrifying efficiency, sinking vessel after vessel laden with the food, fuel, and munitions that Britain desperately needed to survive. The island nation was being slowly strangled by an enemy that seemed to possess an uncanny ability to locate and destroy Allied convoys. German forces communicated using the Enigma machine, a device so sophisticated that its theoretical encryption possibilities numbered approximately 3 times 10 to the power of 114, a number so vast it defied comprehension. Each day, thousands of encrypted messages flew through the air on radio waves, carrying orders for U-boat Wolfpack attacks, coordinating Luftwaffe bombing raids, directing panzer movements across Europe. The Germans had absolute confidence in their machine. They believed, with mathematical certainty, that their communications were secure. They were wrong, but the path to proving them wrong would require brilliance, desperation, international cooperation, and the creation of technology that pushed the boundaries of what was mechanically possible. The story of Enigma's defeat did not begin at Bletchley Park. It began in Poland, in the years before the storm of war broke over Europe, in the mind of a young mathematician named Marian Rejewski. In 1932, working for the Polish Cipher Bureau with fellow mathematicians Jerzy Rzycki and Henryk Zygalski, Rejewski accomplished something extraordinary. Using mathematical group theory, limited documents obtained by French intelligence from a German traitor named Hans Thilo Schmidt, and his own formidable intellect, Rejewski reconstructed the Enigma machine without ever having seen the military version. He determined the complex wiring of each rotor through mathematical equations, solved the internal connections, and then, in an achievement that British cryptanalysts would later find astonishing, discovered that the Germans had connected the plug board to the input rotor alphabetically, a simplicity hidden within layers of complexity. Years after the war, Irving Good, a British mathematician who worked at Bletchley Park alongside Alan Turing, would describe one of Rejewski's theorems as the theorem that won World War II. But possessing knowledge of the machine was not enough. The Poles had to decrypt messages quickly before the intelligence became obsolete. Rejewski and his team created the Bombe, an electromechanical device named for the ticking sound it made while automatically searching for the correct rotor settings. By early 1938, the Polish Cipher Bureau was breaking 75% of German cryptograms, an achievement unmatched by any other cryptologic service in the world. Then the Germans added 2 more rotors to their collection, increasing from 3 to 5 the rotors from which operators could choose. The Polish system, already stretched thin, could not handle the exponential increase in possible combinations. A Bombe designed for 3 rotors would need to become one with 60 interconnected Enigma replicas, a logistical and financial impossibility for Poland. In July 1939, with German invasion imminent and their own efforts exhausted, the Poles made a decision that would alter history. They invited British and French cryptanalysts to Warsaw and handed them everything: the reconstructed Enigma machines, the Bombe designs, the mathematical breakthroughs they had achieved in secret. The British representatives were astonished. They had been working on the Enigma problem for years with virtually no progress. The Poles had given them a foundation upon which to build. Alan Turing arrived at Bletchley Park in September 1939, one of the first recruits to the government code and Cipher school's new headquarters. A Cambridge mathematician with an unconventional mind and little patience for bureaucratic niceties, Turing immediately recognized both the brilliance of the Polish work and its fundamental limitation. The Polish Bombe searched for patterns in message indicators, the repeated letter groups that German operators used to set up each message. But the Germans could change their indicator system at any moment, and indeed they already had, rendering the Polish technique temporarily useless. Turing conceived of something different, a machine that would work not with indicators but with cribs, assumed plaintext that cryptanalysts believed appeared in a message. If you could guess that a weather report contained the word Wetter, German for weather, or that a message ended with the standard sign-off, Heil Hitler, you could use that assumption to test rotor settings. Turing's machine would run through thousands of possible configurations, eliminating those that were impossible, until only the correct settings remained. Gordon Welchman, assigned to traffic analysis but unable to resist the cryptanalytic challenge, independently reinvented the Polish technique of perforated sheets, only to learn that Bletchley was already creating them. Undeterred, he turned his attention to another aspect of the Enigma, the plug board or Steckerbrett, which the Germans called the Stecker. The plug board connected pairs of letters, but it had a crucial property. It was reciprocal. If A plugged into E, then E automatically plugged into A. Welchman designed a diagonal board that exploited this reciprocity, connecting each of 26 rows to 26 columns with wires running diagonally across the board. The diagonal board, simple in concept but revolutionary in impact, would reduce the number of false stops on Turing's machine from thousands to just a few. When Welchman showed his design to Turing, the two men realized they had complementary pieces of the same puzzle. Turing's test registers, combined with Welchman's diagonal board, would create a machine capable of breaking Enigma on an industrial scale. The creation of what they called the Bombe, adopting the French spelling of the Polish Bombe, fell to Harold Doc Keene, an engineer at the British Tabulating Machine Company. Keene took the theoretical designs of two brilliant mathematicians and transformed them into working hardware, a feat of engineering that required solving problems Turing and Welchman had barely considered. The first bomb, named Victory, arrived at Bletchley Park on March 14, 1940. It stood approximately 6.5 feet tall, 7 feet long, and 2 feet wide, weighing about a ton. On its front were 108 drums arranged in 36 sets of 3, each triplet corresponding to the 3 rotors of an Enigma machine. Victory proved too slow, but a redesigned version called Agnus Dei, incorporating Welchman's diagonal board, arrived in August 1940 and proved successful. The top drum spun at approximately 100 revolutions per minute, cycling through all 17,576 possible positions of one rotor order in about 20 minutes. When the machine found a potential solution, a stop, it halted, allowing operators to record the rotor settings. Members of the Women's Royal Naval Service, known as Wrens, operated the bombs in long shifts, working in dark, stuffy rooms filled with the mechanical clatter of rotating drums and the hum of electrical circuits. The bombs began finding keys in less than an hour. But the Germans, for all their confidence in Enigma's security, were not monolithic in their approach. The German army and Luftwaffe grew complacent, believing the mathematical complexity of Enigma rendered additional security measures unnecessary. They became predictable. Weather reports followed standard formats. Messages often began with formulaic phrases. Lazy or tired operators chose obvious message keys, 3 letters in a row on the keyboard, or the initials of a girlfriend. One particular German code clerk continually used silly, his girlfriend's name, and so these easy-to-guess indicators became known at Bletchley as sillies. The British exploited every weakness, maintaining meticulous indexes of message preambles, of every person, ship, unit, weapon, and technical term that appeared in decrypts. They cataloged repeated phrases, forms of address, German military jargon. Nothing succeeded like success, as Derek Taunt, a Cambridge mathematician cryptanalyst, observed each break made the next one easier. By 1941, Bletchley was routinely breaking German army and Luftwaffe Enigma traffic, gathering evidence of the planned invasion of Greece, learning Italian naval plans for the Battle of Cape Matapan, deciphering coded messages from Rommel's Panzer Army in North Africa. The intelligence from these high-level German sources received the codename Ultra. The German Navy, however, was a different adversary entirely. The Kriegsmarine enforced strict communication security procedures. Naval operators did not make the sloppy mistakes their Army and Luftwaffe counterparts made. The Navy also used 8 rotors instead of 5, exponentially increasing the possible combinations. For the first 2 years of the war, German U-boats operated with virtual impunity in the Atlantic. Admiral Karl Dönitz commanded his submarine fleet with tactical genius, coordinating wolfpack attacks through a constant stream of encrypted radio messages. U-boats patrolled the ocean until one spotted a convoy, then radioed for reinforcements. Like wolves hunting in packs, the submarines converged on Allied shipping, sending thousands of tons of vital supplies to the bottom of the Atlantic. In the first 5 months of 1941, the slaughter continued unabated. Britain's lifeline was being severed. Without the ability to read naval Enigma messages, the Allies were fighting blind. The capture of U-110 on May 9, 1941, changed everything. When British warships forced the submarine to surface south of Iceland, the U-boat commander Fritz Julius Lemp believed his vessel was rapidly sinking and about to be rammed. He ordered his crew to abandon ship. In their panic to escape what they thought was imminent death, the radio room crew did not destroy the Enigma machine or the codebooks. A boarding party from HMS Bulldog found a treasure beyond measure. An Enigma with the daily settings still in place, all 8 rotors, codebooks, instructions, and key lists for several different German Navy codes. British representatives arriving from Bletchley were astonished at the haul. Within days, Bletchley Park was reading German naval messages in near real time. Admiral Dönitz noticed immediately that something had changed. Before spring 1941, German attacks sank the majority of Allied shipping tonnage. Then, almost suddenly, the U-boats became the hunted. Convoys seemed to know where submarines lurked and route around them. Dönitz suspected the worst, that the Allies were reading his messages. When he raised his concerns with German high command, they assured him emphatically that Enigma could not be broken. They proposed alternative explanations, superior Allied direction-finding equipment, which the British called Huff Duff, aerial reconnaissance, even a traitor within German ranks. In truth, British direction-finding and traffic analysis did contribute to locating U-boats, but the primary advantage came from reading Enigma decrypts. The Germans never discovered the truth. Britain went to extraordinary lengths to protect the secret. They never took action based solely on ultra-intelligence without first providing a plausible alternative explanation. Most commonly, British aircraft flew reconnaissance missions over areas that Ultra had revealed to be significant. When Allied forces subsequently attacked, the Germans believed their positions had been spotted by aircraft, not betrayed by broken codes. In one instance in 1942, when 5 Italian ships bound for Africa were sunk using Ultra information, Churchill personally sent a telegram to Naples congratulating a fictitious spy and awarding him a bonus. The deception worked. The Germans maintained absolute faith in their machine. As the cryptographic officer investigating Dönitz's suspicions concluded after exhaustive investigation, there was convincing evidence that high-level communications remained secure, with no real basis for acute anxiety as regards any compromise of operational security. Then, in February 1942, the darkness returned. Dönitz, never entirely satisfied despite official assurances, implemented a change he had been planning for months. He added a 4th rotor to U-boat Enigma machines, inserted between the leftmost rotor and the reflecting plate. The rotor could be set in a neutral position to communicate with 3 rotor machines, but for submarine traffic it multiplied the possible settings by 26. The code that Bletchley called Shark became impenetrable overnight. Through the spring and summer of 1942, Allied shipping losses soared. The Germans called it the happy time. Between January and March, they sank 216 ships off the American East Coast alone. The United States, newly entered into the war, had not yet implemented convoy systems or coastal blackouts, making their merchant ships easy targets, silhouetted against bright city lights. The German cryptologic service B-Dienst was also reading Allied convoy communications, allowing U-boats to track and intercept Allied shipping with devastating accuracy. The situation in the Atlantic became desperate. Britain was being starved. Without a solution to the four-rotor Enigma, the Battle of the Atlantic and potentially the entire war could be lost. Bletchley Park attacked the four-rotor problem from multiple angles. They attempted to redesign the bombe to handle the additional rotor, but progress was agonizingly slow. The United States, working with engineer Joseph Desch at the National Cash Register Company in Dayton, Ohio, began designing their own high-speed four-rotor bombe, but that project would take months to complete. The cryptanalysts needed a break, and they got one through a combination of German error and British courage. On October 30th, 1942, in the Mediterranean near port said, British ships tracked and depth charged U-559 for hours until the submarine surfaced, riddled with holes and taking on water. Lieutenant Anthony Faw's son and able seaman Colin Grazier dove into the choppy sea and swam to the stricken submarine. A young sailor named Tommy Brown, who had lied about his age to join the Royal Navy, followed them. The three men climbed into the sinking submarine and broke into the captain's cabin, retrieving documents and equipment. Brown made 3 trips up the conning tower carrying materials to a waiting boat. Faw's son and Grazier refused to leave without a box containing what appeared to be vital equipment. As they finally freed it and began to climb out, the submarine suddenly sank, taking both men to their deaths. But the documents Tommy Brown had carried out, codes for the short weather cipher and short signal book, proved invaluable. The breakthrough came from an operational security error by the Germans themselves. Shore weather stations could only read 3 rotor messages. On December 13, 1942, Bletchley discovered that when U-boats transmitted weather reports, they set the 4th rotor to a neutral position, effectively creating a 3-rotor message. The British could break these weather messages with existing techniques, then test all 26 positions of the 4th rotor to find the daily setting for non-weather shark messages. Suddenly, after 10 months of darkness, ultra-intelligence on U-boats resumed. Decrypts were typically delayed 36 hours on 70% of days, occasionally as long as 10 days, but the Allies could once again track German submarine positions and route convoys to safety. The impact on the Battle of the Atlantic was immediate and dramatic. In the period from September 1943 to March 1944, the contact rate between convoys and U-boats dropped to less than 2/3 of what it had been earlier in the war, and the ability of U-boats to sink convoy ships decreased to almost 1/6 of previous levels. Winston Churchill, visiting Bletchley Park on September 6, 1941, during the darkest period before the naval Enigma was consistently broken, walked through the various huts and saw the men and women working in cramped, makeshift conditions on a problem of staggering complexity. He understood immediately what he was witnessing: an invisible battle being fought with mathematics and determination, a battle as crucial as any fought with guns and ships. He later described the decrypts as his golden eggs, and the codebreakers as the geese who laid the golden eggs but never cackled. He demanded to see not just summaries but raw ultra-intelligence, often before even the chiefs of staff received it, using the information to support his arguments for various strategies and attacks. When the 4 codebreakers known as the Wicked Uncles, Alan Turing, Gordon Welchman, Hugh Alexander, and Stuart Milnerberry, wrote to Churchill in October 1941 asking for more resources, Churchill responded with one of his Action This Day memoranda, cutting through bureaucracy to ensure they received what they needed. The work at Bletchley Park expanded far beyond the bomb machines. By mid-war, the operation employed thousands of people working in various huts and buildings across the estate. Hut 6 under Gordon Welchman broke German Army and Air Force Enigma. Hut 8, where Alan Turing worked initially, focused on naval Enigma. Around 3,000 to 5,000 encrypted messages arrived each day at Bletchley Park. Not all were broken, some took days, others weeks, some were never decrypted, but early breaking was crucial for the intelligence to remain current. The codebreakers developed a sophisticated system for identifying cribs, maintaining detailed indexes of everything that appeared in previous decrypts. They exploited operator errors, lazy message practices, predictable formats. They created specialized sections like the crib room in Hut 8, established by Stuart Milnerberry in 1940, where experts became extraordinarily skilled at guessing plaintext. Hollerith machines in Block C recorded and cataloged vast amounts of data about Enigma decryption, enabling cryptanalysts to compare features and spot patterns in encrypted messages. The challenge of storing and accessing this information at scale prefigured the data management problems that would define the computer age. Admiral Dönitz, despite official reassurances, never entirely abandoned his suspicions. On January 12, 1942, the German supply submarine U-459 arrived 800 nautical miles west of Freetown, well clear of convoy lanes, scheduled for a rendezvous with an Italian submarine. It was intercepted by a British warship. The incident, combined with the dramatic decline in successful U-boat attacks after May 1941, troubled Dönitz deeply. His signals officer offered various explanations ranging from coincidence to direction finding to Italian treachery. General Erich Feldjubel, chief signal officer of Army High Command, conducted investigations that produced convincing evidence of compromise, but other Navy departments downplayed these concerns. They acknowledged vaguely that some components might have been compromised, but insisted there was no basis for acute anxiety. The confidence was not entirely irrational. The mathematical possibilities of Enigma remained astronomical. What the Germans failed to account for was the combination of captured materials, operator errors, British ingenuity, and industrial-scale cryptanalysis. They could not imagine that an organization of thousands of people, working with dozens of electromechanical computers, could systematically break their codes day after day, year after year. At its peak, the British manufactured approximately 210 bombs, each weighing a ton and standing 6.5 feet tall. The machines ran continuously, operated by Wrens who worked long shifts connecting cables according to menus prepared by cryptanalysts, setting rotor positions, and recording stops. It took 10 minutes to change the wheel order and an additional 35 to 50 minutes to set up connections and rotor positions for each run. When a machine stopped, indicating a possible solution, operators would test it on a checking machine and pass results to cryptanalysts. The entire system represented an early form of industrial computing, human intelligence directing mechanical computation on a massive scale. The United States eventually built its own bombs at the National Cash Register Company under Joseph Desch's direction, creating even faster machines that would process four-rotor problems more efficiently than the adapted British designs. The impact of Ultra on the war effort extended far beyond the Battle of the Atlantic. Enigma decrypts revealed German intentions in North Africa, allowing Allied commanders to anticipate Rommel's moves. They provided advance warning of Luftwaffe bombing raids, enabling fighter defenses to be positioned effectively. They exposed German order of battle, troop movements, supply situations, and strategic priorities. During the Normandy invasion, Ultra-intelligence helped convince the Germans that the real landings at Normandy were a feint and the main assault would come at Pas-de-Calais, keeping entire German divisions out of the critical battle. In the words of Churchill to King George VI, "It was thanks to Ultra that we won the war." While this assessment was perhaps somewhat simplified, wars are won through the combination of many factors. Historians have estimated that the breaking of Enigma shortened World War II by approximately 2 years and saved roughly 14 million lives. These figures, while impossible to verify with precision, reflect the profound military advantage that Ultra provided to Allied commanders throughout the war. Yet Alan Turing himself, the man most closely associated with breaking Enigma, had a surprisingly limited direct role in day-to-day codebreaking after 1942. He was instrumental in designing the bomb, heavily involved in the attack on Naval Enigma in the early war years, but by 1942 the code-breaking process on Enigma had become largely mechanized and systematized. There was less need for theoretical breakthroughs and more need for operational efficiency. Turing was sent to the United States to advise on the development of American bombs in Dayton and to inspect secret encryption devices being built at Bell Labs in New York, including a system for enciphering phone calls between Franklin Roosevelt and Winston Churchill. He then worked on his own speech encipherment device. For Turing, the code-breaking was somewhat an interlude in his broader career as a mathematician and computer scientist. He would likely have denied that his own role at Bletchley was unduly significant, though history would judge otherwise. His contributions to theoretical computer science, to artificial intelligence, to the very concept of computation itself, would ultimately prove as revolutionary as his wartime work. Gordon Welchman's contributions were equally significant, though perhaps less celebrated. His diagonal board made the British bomb immensely more powerful, reducing false stops from thousands to a handful. As head of Hut 6, he developed traffic analysis into a sophisticated intelligence methodology, recognizing that metadata, which units sent and received messages, when and where could reveal a great deal about enemy organization, movements, and activities even when message content remained encrypted. He conceived the integrated system whereby codebreakers were supported by military intelligence officers who transformed decrypts into actionable intelligence reports. His gift for organization and planning shaped the entire structure of Bletchley's operations. Yet his later attempts to write about his wartime work would bring him into conflict with British and American security services, who sought to maintain secrecy about signals intelligence methods long after the war ended. The Polish mathematicians Marian Rejewski, Jerzy Rzycki, and Henryk Zygalski, whose foundational work made everything else possible, evacuated to France after Poland fell, continuing their cryptanalytic work there. After France fell in June 1940, they escaped to Algeria, then returned to work clandestinely in southern Vichy France. When the Vichy Free Zone was occupied by Germany in November 1942, Rejewski and Zygalski escaped via Spain, enduring Spanish imprisonment, Portugal, and Gibraltar to Britain. There they were put to work solving low-grade German ciphers, not trusted with knowledge of how their own breakthroughs had been developed and exploited at Bletchley. After the war, Rejewski returned to Poland and remained silent about his work for 2 decades, avoiding attention from Poland's Soviet-dominated government. Only in 1967 did he break his silence, providing Poland's Military Historical Institute with his memoirs. The full story of the Polish contribution to breaking Enigma remained classified or unknown for decades after the war, an injustice slowly corrected by historians. The secrecy surrounding Bletchley Park's work continued long after the war ended. Codebreaking operations ceased in 1946, but all information about wartime operations remained classified until the mid-1970s. The machines were destroyed or hidden away. The thousands of men and women who had worked there returned to civilian life, forbidden to speak about what they had done, unable to claim credit for contributions that had helped win the war. Many took their secrets to their graves. When the story finally began to emerge in the 1970s, the world learned of an achievement that combined mathematical brilliance, engineering innovation, operational discipline, and sheer determination on a scale never before attempted. Bletchley Park had created the world's first industrial-scale computing operation, processing millions of messages, maintaining vast databases of intelligence, coordinating thousands of workers in a systematic attack on what the enemy believed to be an unbreakable cipher. The breaking of Enigma represented more than a military victory. It marked a turning point in the relationship between mathematics, machines, and warfare. The concepts developed at Bletchley Park, programmable machines, stored data, systematic cryptanalysis, information theory, would lay groundwork for the computer revolution that followed. Turing's theoretical work on computation, shaped by his wartime experience, would define the fundamental architecture of modern computers. The recognition that complex problems could be attacked through automated mechanical processes operating at industrial scale would transform not just warfare but commerce, science, and communication. The room at Bletchley Park where the bombs clattered away, breaking code after code, year after year, was not just cracking German communications. It was opening a window into a future where information itself would become the most valuable commodity, and the ability to process, store, and analyze information would define power. In that stable yard where Dilly Knox and his team broke their first Enigma message in January 1940, in the huts where thousands of men and women worked in secrecy and discomfort, in the clicking, whirring bomb machines that ran day and night searching for German rotor settings, in all of this, something unprecedented was being born. The Germans had created what they believed to be an unbreakable machine, with its 159 million possible settings, and they had used it to coordinate one of the most sophisticated military machines ever assembled. The British and their allies had proven that no code is truly unbreakable, that human ingenuity combined with mechanical computation could defeat even the most sophisticated encryption, that mathematics could be a weapon as powerful as any gun or bomb. Admiral Donitz stood at the Nuremberg trials and testified about the Battle of the Atlantic, stating, "The Battle of the Atlantic was nearly won prior to July 1942, when German losses were within reasonable limits. But they jumped 300% when Allied aircraft, aided by radar, which came like an epileptic stroke, were used in the fight." He never realized that it was not radar that defeated his U-boats but the breaking of the codes he had believed secure. More than 63 million Enigma messages were broken at Bletchley Park during the war, a staggering number that represented years of continuous cryptanalytic effort, millions of hours of bomb operation, countless cribs identified and tested, databases maintained and searched, intelligence analyzed and distributed. Each message represented German military communications laid bare, intentions revealed, movements exposed, strategies compromised. The full scope of this achievement remained hidden for decades, but its impact was felt in every theater of the war, in every strategic decision informed by ultra-intelligence, in every convoy that safely crossed the Atlantic because it had been routed away from U-boat wolf packs, in every battle where Allied commanders knew what their enemy planned before the enemy executed it. Churchill's geese had indeed laid golden eggs, and they had never cackled, until historians finally told their story, revealing one of the greatest secret triumphs of the Second World War.